RunSignUp's registration step is where you will set the normal registration fees for your race. This is the pricing that all of your registrants need to pay if they do not qualify for any type of discounted pricing, such as age-based pricing, group-based pricing, multi-person sign-up pricing, and so on. To learn more about any of these discounted pricing features, simply go to the race dashboard and type them into the menu search. Here you can click to jump right to that feature's setup page, and you can click on the help button that is found on that page if you need any more information. The registration setup can be accessed in the race wizard by selecting the registration step, or you can access it from the race dashboard by selecting the race tab, opening up the registration subheading, and clicking on Dates, Pricing, and Options. It's important to note that more options will be available to you if you access the registration setup through the race dashboard. For this tutorial, we will look mostly at the race dashboard page because all of the fields found in the race wizard step also appear on the dashboard page. This section will show you how to create as many registration periods as you would like, upload paper registration forms, set restrictions and limitations on registration, and edit the race waiver. In the registration section, you will be able to customize the registration information for the events that you created in the basic info step. If you have more than one event created for your race, then the settings in this section can be modified across several events at the same time if necessary, or by individual event. To change the settings across multiple events simultaneously, you can click on Modify Multiple Events, and the Edit Multiple Events window will pop up for you. Within this window, you can use the checkboxes to select only the events that you want to apply similar settings to, or you can click the Select All button to check off all of the events. By default, all of the fields are disabled, and they will appear as slightly faded. When you click on a field, you will notice that it no longer remains faded. Therefore, that field is enabled, and any change made to that field will apply to all events selected above. If you decide that you do not want to change a field anymore, then simply hit the Escape key while on that field, and it will become faded out once more. Please note that faded fields will not be altered across all events. Any information existing in those faded fields will remain unchanged. In this Edit Multiple Events pop-up window, the fields can be edited in the same manner as they would be for individual events. We will go into a more detailed explanation of all of these fields in a moment. When you are finished editing the necessary fields, and all of the fields that you want left unchanged are set as faded, then click on the button for Copy to Events. Or you can cancel if you do not wish to make these changes. Please remember that if you do click Copy to Events, you will still need to save the changes at the bottom of the page in order for those changes to go into effect. Individual events can be edited underneath their specific events section. Events can be found manually by scrolling through the page, or you can use the Select an Event guide in the lower right-hand corner. By clicking on an event in the Select an Event guide, you will be brought directly to that event's editable details. Before setting up your registration periods, make sure that you read any and all of the notices that appear in red underneath the registration periods heading. Please note that you may not have any notices here. Different notices may show up here depending on the particular setup of your race. In order for users to register for an event, the event needs to have at least one registration period. By default, a period entry block will be opened up for you to fill out as soon as you go to the page. But if you happen to delete this block, then you can always add another period in order to create another block. To set up a registration period, begin by entering in the date and time when the first registration period will open into the Registration Open section. Next, enter in the date and time when the first registration period will close into the Registration Closes section. Then, fill out the field for event fee to indicate what the event pricing is for that particular registration period. If you would like, you can also fill out the field for strike-through pricing. Strike-through pricing will show a price that is crossed out alongside the current price. This is useful for indicating a period of discounted pricing. For instance, if your opening registration period is $30, but you decide to add an early bird registration period, which is $25, you can enter $25 into the event fee and $30 into the strike-through pricing, and this could hopefully work as incentive to get people to register for the race now instead of later. For each registration window, you have the option to set pricing based on event size. It's important to note that most races will not use this feature, but if you do plan on using it, make sure that you read all of the information provided before setting it up. After reading, if you would like to use this feature, then you can click Add Row and set the event size at which you want the price to update at, and the new price that you want it to update to. Make sure that the participant count that you enter here has not already been met, because if you already have 200 participants, and you set the event size to 150 participants, then the new price will never be triggered, and the standard event fee will remain the fee. Please note that if you're using pricing based on event size, then you probably will not want to use strike-through pricing. This is because the strike-through pricing will not update as your new price goes up. You can add as many rows as you need for pricing based on event size, but it's important to realize that once the end date and time for that period arrives, all of these prices based on event size will end as well. And then the next pricing period will begin as scheduled, even if the next registration period's event fee is lower than the new price based on event size in the previous registration window. You can delete any or all of the rows by clicking on the X next to that row. And if you are just trying to increase the price for a particular registration period so that it changes immediately, you can simply edit the event fee field. Once again, most races will never use the pricing based on event size. This is a specific pricing feature for specific races, so for this tutorial we will not be using this feature. You can add as many registration periods as you would like by clicking on Add Another Period and repeating the process. And it's important to note that within each event, registration periods cannot overlap with other registration periods. So make sure that all of your registration opens dates and times are after the registration closes dates and times of the previous registration period. Of course, if you do end up with overlapping dates and times, you will be alerted of this overlap when you go to save the changes, and you will not be able to save the changes until after you have corrected this. If you need to remove any registration period, then simply click on the trash can icon, which is found inside that registration period's entry box. Within each event's registration settings box, there will also be a section for registration options. By default, this section is hidden, however you can click on Show in order to view additional settings per event. You can disable registrations by checking off the box for Disable Registrations and entering in an alternate registration URL. With registrations disabled, the Sign Up button that is specific to that event will link to your alternate registration URL. Please note that by checking off the Disable Registrations box, this will override any and all registration windows that are set up for that event above, and you will need to enter in an alternate registration URL in order to save. Disabling registration is not the same as closing registration. To simply close your registration, set your current registration period's closing date and time to an hour ago, and delete any registration periods that have not opened up yet. This will simply close registration for that event for the time being, and you can always easily open it up again by adding a new registration period. If you have a downloadable registration form for your race which you would like to offer to your registrants, then you can click on Browse in the Upload Registration Form section in order to import a PDF of your paper registration form. This will allow registrants to sign up for your race offline if you would like to offer that alternative. And when you receive those offline registrations, you can always go to the race dashboard, select Participants, then Import, in order to make sure that all of your offline registrants are visible in your RunSignUp participant report. Keeping all of your registrant information in one place makes things easier for you as the race director because it allows you to see more accurate reporting for your race. To learn more about how to use the import feature or any of the reporting features, simply go to that features page on the dashboard and click on the Help button that is found on that page. Please note that paper registration forms cannot be created within RunSignUp, so you will need to create these on your own if you would like to offer them. Once uploaded and saved, this PDF will be available for download on the event info page of your race under the Show Registration Details section. For the most part, races will probably want to encourage online registration versus paper registration because with paper registration there is more work for the race director to do, and there is the added hassle of trying to figure out what somebody wrote on a registration form when you're trying to transfer their information from paper to online. There are also various limitations that you can set on your registration per event. If you would like to limit an event's registration to a maximum number of participants, then you can enter your participant cap into the field provided. However, most races will leave this field blank to allow for any number of registrants to sign up for that event. If you do need to set up participant caps for your race, then you can go into more detail on this by going to the race dashboard, selecting Race, Registration, and then Participant Caps. To learn more about this feature, simply click on the Help button which is found on that page. If you would like to limit event registration by age, then you can set a minimum age through a maximum age. Please note that age restrictions are based on race day age unless the age calculation base date was changed in the event step of the race wizard, in which case age restrictions will be based on that age. By setting a minimum and maximum age for an event, no one outside of this age range will be able to sign up for this event. Please note that these are not the fields that you would use if you want to set up age-based pricing for an event. The fields for limit event registration by age will prohibit people from registering for this specific event entirely, while the age-based pricing feature allows you to offer discounts to people who are eligible for registering for that event. You can learn more about the age-based pricing feature by going to Financial, Pricing, Age-based Pricing, and then clicking on the Help button, which is found on that page. Limit event registration by age is another one of the settings that most races will not use, so we will clear out both of these fields and save them as blank so that anyone can register for this race. Limitations can also be placed on the gender of that event's participants. The limit event registration by gender field will default to allow both male and female registrants. However, you can change this to allow only male registrants or only female registrants into this event. Again, most events are open to all people, so we will go back to the default setting for male and female registrants. Another setting that most races will never need to use is the private event code setting. Do not fill out this field unless you understand what it does. By filling out this field, you will hide this particular event from your race page, basically making it into a secret event that people can sign up for only if they have a customized link. If you do have a need to use this option, then you can enter in the private event code here. For this tutorial, we'll make the code secret event, with no spaces because spaces are not allowed in this field. With the private event code set, you would copy this URL, and where it says ABC, you would replace that with your private event code. So in this case, we would change ABC to secret event. You would then share this link with people who you want to have access to this private event's registration. Seeing as this feature will rarely need to be used by a race, we will delete this field's information and leave it as blank. Underneath the question for which fields are required for race participants, you can use the checkboxes to select which fields are required to be filled out by participants of a specific event. These include gender, date of birth, address, city, state, country, zip code, and phone. Any of the items left checked here will be asked of your registrants, while any of the items that are unchecked will not be asked of your registrants. We advise that you leave all of these checked off, seeing as this is standard information to collect for a registration. However, you can turn off whichever fields you do not wish to collect the information for. Please note though that if you have restrictions set above for age or gender, then their respective checkboxes will automatically become checked off when you save the changes, even if you uncheck them now. For obvious reasons, you are not able to turn off the gender field if you have a gender limitation on your event, and you are not able to turn off the date of birth field if you have an age limitation on your event. Each event in your race has its own section, which you can view and edit the settings for individually, and at the bottom of the page there is also a box for global race settings. Here you can find actions that will affect all of the events in your race. The section for hidden registration fields will allow you to select which fields you would like to hide during your race's registration process, and this will apply to all events in your race. It's important to note, as stated a moment ago, if you currently have a field being required for a certain event, such as gender or date of birth, then you will not be able to hide that field in this section race-wide. You can use the Modify Multiple Events option to edit these settings on all applicable events. On the registration setup page, you also have the ability to edit the API registration options. If you do not know what API is, then you will likely not need this section. However, if you do want to learn more about RunSignUp's API, you can go to our blog, runsignup.wordpress.com, and search for API. The Waiver Options section of the registration setup allows you to customize the race waiver along with the waiver signing options. In the text field labeled Edit the Waiver, you can read and edit the information that is found in your race waiver. By default, the box for when registering multiple people require each registrant to agree to the waiver separately will be unchecked. By leaving this unchecked, this will ask registrants to select a single checkbox in order to agree to the waiver for all of the registrants on their transaction. If you would like to use another waiver signing option, then you can check off the box for, when registering multiple people, require each registrant to agree to the waiver separately. By selecting this checkbox, additional waiver options will be opened up to you. Here is what each of the signature options will look like on the race page registration form. Have a checkbox per registrant, enter full name per registrant, enter full name and date of birth per registrant, enter full name and current date per registrant, enter initials per registrant, enter initials and date of birth per registrant, and enter initials and current date per registrant. If you would like to require the registrant to scroll through the full waiver, then you can turn on this option here. This will not allow the registrant to proceed with registration until after scrolling through the entire waiver. For any of the non-default waiver signature options, you will also have the option to allow the registrant to skip signing the waiver. This only applies when multiple people are registering on a single transaction, and the first registrant must sign their waiver during registration, unless otherwise indicated in the following setting. If you check off this box, then the registrant will be sent an email with instructions on how to sign the waiver after their initial registration. Please note that it would then become your responsibility to make sure that all participants have signed the waiver if you need them to sign the waivers in order to participate in your event. You can also only allow the primary account holder to sign the waiver during registration. With this option selected, the waivers for the primary account holder and any minors under 18 on the registration can be signed during the registration process. However, all others will be forced to sign later. When you are finished making changes to the registration section, be sure to scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on either the Save button if you are on the race dashboard, or if you are on the race wizard, you can click Save and Continue.